Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Authorities in Pinellas County, Florida say that a local woman is facing a number of charges this week after she allegedly went on a violent and unhinged rampage inside of a convenience store. The whole thing reportedly began at around 10 p.m. on April 26th when 37-year-old Christina Marie Crane walked into a Wawa convenience store on the 3100 block of Gandy Boulevard in the city of Pinellas Park. Once inside, Crane headed towards the deli where she grabbed a large knife from behind the counter. She allegedly used this to stab a male employee in the hand. Crane then ran into a small office inside the store where the attack reportedly continued. She raised the same knife above her head, telling one female staff member, quote, "I will kill you," before swinging the blade at another. Luckily, neither of the women were stabbed, though Crane allegedly destroyed several pieces of store property, including multiple computers, before finally being arrested. The 37-year-old is now facing multiple charges, including attempted felony murder, criminal mischief, aggravated assault, and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. It's believed that Crane was under the influence of drugs at the time the incident took place.
Representatives from the Ontario Special Investigations Unit say that they are working to piece together the details of a devastating tragedy this week, following a wild police chase on Canada's busiest highway that left 4 people dead, 3 of whom were members of the same family. The situation began shortly before 7 p.m. on April 29th, when Durham Regional Police received a call about a crime in progress at an LCBO store in the community of Clarington, just outside the city of Bowmanville. The details of that incident still have not been officially confirmed at this time. However, according to numerous reports, a 21-year-old man attempted to rob the liquor store with a knife. The attempted robbery was allegedly witnessed by an off-duty police officer who was one of those who notified authorities. Immediately after leaving the LCBO, the 21-year-old suspect reportedly got into a U-Haul rental van and began driving west. He was quickly located by officers from the Durham Police, who began a chase. At the beginning, the pursuit mostly took place on local roads. However, things escalated significantly when the 21-year-old suspect pulled onto the 401 and started driving the wrong way. While speeding westbound towards Toronto in the eastbound lanes, the suspect was spotted by numerous drivers, many of whom were forced to swerve and take immediate action to avoid a collision. At the same time, more and more police began to join the chase, with stunned onlookers watching as more than a dozen police cruisers also barreled down the highway in the wrong direction. During this time, at least one officer told an Ontario Provincial Police dispatcher over the radio, quote, "Someone is going to get hurt." Sadly, this comment proved all too correct, as just moments later, roughly 20 minutes into the chase, the situation ended in disaster. The U-Haul van being driven by the suspect slammed into oncoming traffic, a horrifying collision that involved at least 6 vehicles and led to the deaths of 4 people. While the suspect was one of those killed, all of the others were innocent victims who were members of the same family. They have since been identified as 60-year-old Manivannan Srinivasapillai, his wife, 55-year-old Mahalakshmi Anantakrishnan, and their 3-year-old grandson, Aditya. The boy's mother and father were also in the same vehicle and were also hospitalized, though they managed to survive. As you might imagine, they are devastated, particularly the father, who lost his only son and both of his parents in a matter of seconds. A 38-year-old who was in the passenger seat of the U-Haul was also hospitalized, though it's unclear if they will be facing any charges. At the time of this recording, much of the focus has moved to the law enforcement response to the incident, with many now questioning whether the actions of Durham police were necessary or simply made the situation more dangerous and deadly. Right now, this is being investigated by the province's Special Investigations Unit. The situation is still developing.
Representatives from the Maine State Police released a tragic update in a nearly year-long disappearance case this week, announcing that the missing 34-year-old victim has now officially been found dead. The whole thing began on May 14th of 2023, when family members of 34-year-old Alex Jackson called authorities in the town of Wyndham to report him missing. The family members said that they had not been able to get in contact with Alex for 2 days, and said that this was extremely unusual for him. After launching an investigation, police determined that Alex had last been seen sometime on May 14th when he was driving in the town of Leeds. At the time, the 34-year-old was traveling in his Dodge Ram pickup truck and was towing a gooseneck trailer. It was believed that he was heading to Vermont, though it was unclear if he ever arrived. Concern was raised even further when Alex's dog was found a few days later and was wearing a different collar. The next update in the case came 10 months later when police arrested a 30-year-old man named Joseph Shute in connection with the case. Shute is from the town where Alex was last seen and was charged with murder. According to police, he confessed to several witnesses that he was involved in the disappearance. While Schute's lawyers attempted to get the murder charges against him dropped because no body had ever been found, that changed this week when investigators made a second announcement. Alex's remains had been located in the town of Stark, New Hampshire. At the time of this recording, no other information has been released about the case. So far, we don't know Alex's cause of death, nor has any alleged motive been shared with the public. The situation is still developing.
Representatives from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police say that a previously missing Idaho teen is now facing murder charges after he allegedly stabbed a woman to death in Las Vegas and then attempted to cover up the crime. The case began at around 7:35 a.m. on April 29th when police were called to a business on the 9000 block of West Sahara Avenue near South Fort Apache Road. When officers arrived at the scene, they were led to an enclosure housing dumpsters at the back of the building. Inside was the body of a woman, later identified as 60-year-old Gina Broom. She had been stabbed at least a dozen times, and her remains had been covered with trash bags and cardboard. After reviewing surveillance footage from the area, authorities recovered video of Gina taken on the afternoon of April 27th, 2 days before her body was found. In the footage, the 60-year-old could be seen pushing a shopping cart at around 3 p.m., close to the same dumpster where her remains were located. However, this wasn't the only thing that the cameras captured. Cameras also recorded a young man parking his vehicle in the area around the same time Gina walked past. This man would reportedly be captured on video several times over the next 2 hours as he hung around the dumpster crime scene. Police later learned that at one point the man walked into the business at the front of the building and actually asked an employee whether the security cameras out back were working. The employee took the man to the area and pointed out where the cameras were. Thanks to this footage, police were able to identify the man in the video as Lincoln Bowe, an 18-year-old originally from Idaho. At the time, Bowe had been reported missing by his parents. Police caught up with Bowe on May 2nd when they found him sleeping in his car in the neighboring city of Henderson. The teen was brought in for questioning, during which he allegedly confessed to stabbing Gina. When asked what had happened, Bowe reportedly told detectives that Gina got aggressive during a dispute over cigarettes, which he apparently gave her money to buy. He stated that she was, quote, tweaking out and tried to claw at him, after which he stabbed her with a knife that he kept in his utility belt. He claimed that he had only stabbed her once, despite the evidence found at the scene. However, he allegedly did admit to dragging Gina's body and covering it once it was in the dumpster. The 18-year-old also told authorities that he disappeared from Idaho and came to Las Vegas to, quote, get away and have some freedom. Bowe was arrested and is now facing a charge of open murder with a deadly weapon.
Authorities in Chester County, Pennsylvania say that an elderly man is facing murder charges after he allegedly shot and killed his wife and daughter during the middle of an argument last week, then bragged to police about his marksmanship skills. According to reports, the whole thing started sometime on the evening of April 25th when the suspect, 76-year-old Roger Hanks, became angry with his 75-year-old wife, Judith. Judith had come home to get her husband after making dinner for him, but got annoyed when he refused to come and eat. When she expressed her frustration, Hanks reportedly threatened her with a Smith & Wesson handgun, which he was in the middle of cleaning. He apparently told her, quote, if you keep up, this thing is going off on you, and said that, quote, if she did not shut up and leave him alone, he was going to plug her. Not long after, Hanks allegedly shot Judith in the chest, killing her. When his adult daughter, Emily, heard what was happening and ran to help her mother, Hanks allegedly shot her as well. Afterwards, he reportedly called a friend, telling them that his wife had, quote, gone crazy. The friend contacted police, who arrived at the scene to find both Judith and Emily dead. After being taken into custody, Hanks apparently admitted to the killings, but framed the situation as if it was an accident. When referring to the shootings of his wife and daughter, he stated both times that the gun had simply gone off while he was pointing it at them. Despite this, he reportedly bragged to police about how good he was with firearms, stating that he regularly shoots at competitions and is, quote, the best of the best when it comes to marksmanship. Hanks is now facing 2 counts of first-degree murder as well as related offenses.
Representatives from Florida's Pinellas County Sheriff's Office say that a 46-year-old man is facing charges this week after he allegedly flew off the handle during the middle of a road rage incident and pelted another driver with pasta and sauce. The whole thing reportedly unfolded at around 9 p.m. on April 25th, when the suspect, 46-year-old Nolan Goines, was traveling in a vehicle near his home in the city of St. Petersburg. He was heading down Park Street near Bay Pines Boulevard when he became frustrated by another driver's, quote, glaring headlights. Apparently, this was enough to turn him into a bit of a spicy meatball, if you will. After pulling up beside the other driver, Goines allegedly grabbed some pasta and sauce he had with him and flung it out his passenger window and into the open driver's side window of the other vehicle. The victim was apparently splattered with the messy food on his arms, legs, and torso, at which point Goines drove off. Unfortunately for the 46-year-old, his half-baked, or should I say al dente reaction, quickly came back to bite him. When police caught up with him a short time later, he had an identical sauce stain on his right sleeve to the ones on the victim's clothing. He was arrested and is now facing a charge of misdemeanor battery. Apparently, the 46-year-old already has a rap sheet that includes previous battery charges, though unfortunately reports do not state whether these were also pasta-related.
Authorities in Orange County, Florida say that they're investigating a potential serial killer this week after a man was arrested in connection with the murders of 2 women whose bodies were found under similarly disturbing circumstances just a month apart. According to reports, the case began on March 14th when the partially clothed body of 41-year-old Fatia Flowers was found near the intersection of Marathon and Herald Roads in East Orange County. An autopsy showed that she had been strangled before being dumped at the side of a road. Just over a month later, a second victim, 44-year-old Nicole Daniels, was found under eerily similar circumstances. She was also partially clothed, had died from strangulation, and had been dumped in almost the exact same location. A look into both women's backgrounds showed that they were homeless at the time of their murders and were known to be engaging in sex work. After launching an investigation, the Orange County Sheriff's Department were led to 25-year-old Carlos Baez-Nieves. This was after they discovered surveillance footage that showed Nicole Daniels getting into the 25-year-old's pickup truck the night before her remains were found. Baez-Nieves was arrested on May 3rd after he was pulled over for driving with a suspended license. During a subsequent police interview, the 25-year-old allegedly admitted to killing Nicole and Fatia, though claimed that they had attacked him first. Authorities say they now believe that Baez-Nieves specifically chose the 2 victims because he knew that they were vulnerable, believing he could get away with the crime. Because of this and the similar MOs between the murders, they are now trying to determine if the 25-year-old has other victims, calling him a potential serial killer. At the time of this recording, Baez-Nieves remains in custody on 2 counts of first-degree murder. The situation is still developing.
Authorities in Charlotte, North Carolina say that they are investigating the aftermath of a devastating tragedy this week following a deadly standoff at a local residence that left 4 law enforcement officers dead and at least 4 others wounded. The terrifying incident began at around 1:30 p.m. on April 29th, when officers from a U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force arrived at a home on the 5000 block of Galway Drive. They were backed up by officers from other agencies, including the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, and were there to serve a warrant for firearm possession by a convicted felon against 39-year-old Terry Clark Hughes Jr. The 39-year-old was supposedly living at the suburban rental property and was also wanted for 2 counts of felony fleeing to elude in neighboring Lincoln County. However, as the task force members went to serve the warrant, things spiraled out of control. As they repeatedly called for Hughes to exit the residence, the 39-year-old allegedly ambushed the officers, shooting at them from the 2nd floor. The officers returned fire but were quickly forced to retreat and take cover as Hughes continued to fire at them from above. The chaotic situation resulted in several being hit, while fellow officers struggled to get them to safety. According to reports, at least 100 rounds were fired during the confrontation, though the initial firefight ended in a standoff. The This lasted for approximately 3 hours, finally taking a turn when an armored SWAT vehicle was driven into the front of the house. It's unclear from reports exactly how the situation ended, though by the time it was all over, Hughes had been killed. Sadly, so had 4 of the law enforcement officers who had initially gone to the scene. The 4 deceased officers have now been identified as Deputy U.S. Marshal Thomas M. Weeks Jr., North Carolina Department of Adult Corrections officers Sam Palach and William Alden Elliott, and Charlotte-Mecklenburg police officer Joshua Iyer. At least one other CMPD officer, Christopher Tolley, was critically injured by gunfire, though is now said to be in stable condition following surgery. 2 other CMPD officers were treated for gunshot wounds, while another suffered a broken foot during the incident. Following the tragedy, police announced that they had taken 2 female persons of interest into custody, one of whom is a 17-year-old juvenile, who were reportedly inside the house at the time of the standoff. Authorities say that they are currently investigating whether a second shooter was involved in the incident, though so far no charges have been filed. At the time of this recording, the situation is still developing. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.